Crippling anxiety doesn't always start with something obvious. Sometimes it builds quietly over time as you slowly start abandoning yourself until you don't recognize who you are anymore. Welcome to the WTF Podcast, friends. My name is Molly Smith, and I'm on a mission to equip 1 million people with the tools to recognize when they're in the funk, but more importantly, how to pivot out of it. By tuning in today, you've joined me on this mission, and I'm so glad you are here. My guest today went through a season of chronic anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and a loss of identity. That, at its lowest point, led her to the brink of suicide. From the outside, everything looked fine. But underneath it, Ciara was constantly second-guessing herself, and she didn't know who she wanted to be anymore. What she had to learn, step by step, was how to rebuild a relationship with herself. But what makes Ciara's story so powerful isn't just what she went through, but it's how far it got before she realized what was actually happening. And what came out of this season didn't just help her heal. It laid the foundation for the way she now guides women to reclaim radical self-love as a lifestyle so they can stop abandoning themselves and become the leader of their own life again. Please join me in welcoming Ciara Waterfield to the WTF Podcast. Hey there.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for having me. What a delightful introduction. I was sat there listening like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
That's you. That's about you.
Thank you. It's so lovely to hear it said back. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. Your story is so powerful. So I want to dive in. I want you to take us back to that season of your life when the anxiety and the intrusive thoughts were kind of growing and when they actually peaked. What was going on in your life?
Of course. So I'll start by saying that this awakening that I had, where I became awake to myself, the habits, the patterns, the beliefs that had been running my life for most of my young adult life, I would say, was nothing that I expected. That was not what I expected to happen, to become awake to them in a sudden instant moment. I just turned 21 the August before I'd had my spiritual awakening, and that was definitely not on my birthday list for my 21st birthday. Let me just internally implode and rebuild my life from the inside out.
Right.
I had, prior to this, just left an abusive and toxic relationship, and classic me at that time leapt straight back into another one to try and patch over what it was that I was feeling, to try and get somebody else to save me rather than me actually looking within and saving myself, which is ultimately what ended up having to happen. But leading up to, from my 21st birthday, ending this old relationship, coming into a new one, and moving towards, I say the date of my awakening, it's always over an extended period of time, but I just remember waking up on the 27th of October, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Leading up to that date, I'd started to notice things that I was doing within this relationship. So the relationship was the stage that was kind of being set for me to springboard into this moment in my life, into this really pivotal point. And I was noticing things that I was doing, ways that I was interacting with this guy that were extremely disproportionate to what it was that he was actually doing, or what it was that I was actually experiencing. And my body was reacting and my mind was reacting. And there was a part of me that was a little bit aware for the first time, going, that seems a little bit of an extreme reaction, Ciara. Like, calm down. That seems a little bit of a strange way to respond to something quite basic.
Yeah.
And it built a little and built a little and built a little, but nothing prepared me for that morning of the 27th of October when I woke up. And it felt like my entire system, it felt like a ticking time bomb had gone off inside of me. I had classic anxiety symptoms, but ramped up to the max. So racing heart rate, sick to the stomach, clammy hands. My mind felt alert, but not in a way where you think, oh, bright and clear and ready to go. Alert in a way that was poised for the danger around me. Even though I was perfectly safe, I was in my mum's home, I didn't need to worry about myself at that point in time. And this existential fear feeling, like impending doom was coming at that point in time. So I got up and I thought, okay, well, that doesn't feel normal, but let me just put it in a box. I'm going to do a bit of yoga. I'm going to do a bit of meditation. I'd started a daily practice a little bit before that. which is probably why I'd started becoming more aware of myself, because I'd started this practice.
Mm-hmm.
Thought, let me just do that. Let me just pop it in a box. I'll just heal it away. I'll yoga it away. I'll meditation it away, and it'll be absolutely fine. Did my practice. Nothing has shifted. I still felt in this existential panic. And then the thoughts started, because the mind then starts to intellectualize and grasp onto whatever it possibly can that's going on in the body to work out what was wrong. And that's what my mind started to do. Now, this spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and I couldn't get it to stop.
Mm.
No matter how hard I tried, I could not get it to stop. This period of my life, feeling chronically anxious, turns out I'd felt like that for a very long time. I just hadn't realized. I'd cut myself off from my body and was a floating head through my life.
Okay.
So this period of time, this chronic anxiety, these racing thoughts, which then ended up turning into intrusive thoughts because it was incessant, the feeling of fear in my body, lasted from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep for give or take 6 months before I found
Oh.
any kind of respite, every single day. And
Oh my gosh.
there are two pivotal points in this part of the story where something clicked, something landed, and I went, I need to become the hero of my own life. There's something seriously wrong, not with me, but the relationship I have to myself and to my life and the way that I experience it. So over this period of 6 months, the intrusive thoughts carried on spiraling. You know, I'd walk out onto the street and I'd imagine horrific things happening to myself, to other people, me doing them to other people. I honestly sat there and thought, I can't speak to anybody, or it felt like that to me at the time, because if I do, they're going to think I'm a nutcase. I literally, I feel like I can't say what it is that I'm experiencing in my life.
Yeah.
And it got to such a point that as a result of feeling chronically anxious, having these racing thoughts, I became suicidally depressed because I didn't know how to stop it, and it felt like I couldn't. But the 2 points that really were the turning point for me, the first was that I was with the guy that I was seeing at the time, who absolutely was the right person for me to be with at that point in time. It turns out we are no longer together. I have a wonderful beloved in my life with my daughter now, but that guy was the right one for me to be with at that point in my journey. He
Sure.
turned to me and he said to me, oh, I would love it if you felt like you could always be yourself around me. And every girl wants to hear that, surely.
Absolutely.
Every girl was like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
like what a romantic, wonderful thing to say. And for me, it was like a rock sinking to the base of my stomach, because I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
How could I be myself for another person if I had no clue who
Right.
that woman was, amidst the anxiety, amidst the depression, amidst all of this fear feeling? I had no identity to anchor onto,
Right.
because I've been outsourcing it most of my life to other people. And the
Right.
second pivotal point, thank goodness, as I was moving closer and closer towards the point of feeling like I wanted to commit suicide, like I wanted to have an out and get out of this feeling once and for all. Luckily, I had my yoga teacher training booked a week after this point had happened, or I got to this pivotal moment. And I genuinely booked the yoga teacher training 6 months before, because I had no idea about the philosophy, but thought, hey, whilst I'm acting, whilst I'm going about doing my acting jobs, that would be a great side hustle to earn an extra bit of money. Genuinely was the only reason I was going for this teacher training. I had this moment where I was contemplating my suicide, thinking, how am I going to do it? How am I going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And my heart stopped me and went, don't. I don't know whether it was intervention, don't know whether that was my highest self speaking, or, God or goddess consciousness coming in through me. I don't know. You can call it what you want. But my heart said, don't, because you're going to help other people do this one day. You're going to help other people overcome this. So in my quaking moment, I was going, okay, fine, I accept my mission. Okay, whatever. Kept on pushing through. No idea how I was going to move out of this.
Yeah.
Got on the plane, went to my yoga teacher training in Spain, sat in the circle for the first philosophy session, and the teacher started speaking. She opened her mouth and I went, this is what's going to save me. This is what's going to be the thing that saves me. And it did. And the rest is history. And from that point, from that moment of sitting in that circle, I was on a mission to know myself deeper. And at that point, it was literally a matter of life or death. Now it's a matter of how much do I want to thrive in my life.
Yes. Well, of course. Of course.
Exactly.
Okay, so you were in a toxic relationship before all of this happened. How did you show up in that relationship? Tell me about Ciara in that season. How did you abandon yourself? What did that look like?
So to paint a picture, from the age of 14 to the age of 21, I was consistently in different relationships over a string of different relationships over an extended period of time due to things that I had witnessed in my childhood and patterns that I learned from that place. I realized that if I could be in a relationship with somebody, I could, quote unquote, receive the love and the attention and the emotional capacity from another person that I so deeply craved,
Yeah.
not knowing that really this was something that needed to come from myself. But that was my search. My subconscious search was, how can I find this from my romantic partner? I then went into a career like that. I went into the acting and musical theatre world, which is totally based on other people's opinions. So it turns out I was searching it from all other areas of my life.
Right.
But through all these relationships, not just the one I was in right before I did my relationship hop into my awakening journey, I totally abandoned myself in these relationships and allowed my sense of self to be based on what it was that they thought of me, or not even what it was that they thought of me, because they weren't explicitly telling me or showing me what it was that they quote unquote thought of me. I was reading based on their actions what it was that I thought I was like, or I was worthy of, or the attention that I deserved, quote unquote, based on their actions. And this led me into chronic people pleasing. I people
Mhm.
pleased the hell out of my young adult life in absolutely everything, whether it was adopting their music taste, adopting what kind of TV shows they liked. You know, it's okay, we'll watch this, we'll listen to this. Oh, I'll actually quite like this because you do. And molding and shaping my identity to who it was that they were.
Yes.
Whether it was surveying their emotional landscape so that I could then alter myself and make sure that I kept everything hunky dory and perfectly fine the way that it should be all the time in my mind at that point in time. Now I know that that's a total fallacy. But back then I thought, well, if everything remains fine all the time, if everything remains perfect and nobody has an argument and nobody, there's no chinks in the armor of our emotional body, everything will remain fine. Nobody can ever leave me. That was the core of it. It was,
Yes.
I don't ever want to be abandoned. I don't ever
Mm.
want to feel emotional pain. I had such a deep and rich emotional world as a child, and still do. I just didn't know where to handle it and didn't know where to place it. So placed it the
Uh,
furthest away outside of me to avoid myself from taking responsibility.
yeah, that's so fascinating because you took on the likes, the interests of the people that you were in relationship with so that you wouldn't feel abandoned, but at the same time you were abandoning your own like thoughts, beliefs, likes, interests, and all of that. So that's a really interesting juxtaposition there. And to be looking outside of ourselves for love and acceptance and worth. I have so many of these conversations and I hear it all the time. And I've experienced it myself where we look outside of ourselves for that worth and that validation when really that's an internal job. It's an internal job to do that. Okay. So,
100%.
yes. Okay. Well, first of all, the fact that you have gone through this at age 21, you've got like decades left to live this beautiful life. I so wish that I had my awakening so much earlier. I had it like 2 years ago. so, so that's so amazing, and it seems like it sets you on the path to do the work that you do today. So
Absolutely.
okay, so the yoga training that you went to in Spain, by the way, that sounds amazing. Just
Oh, it was
saying.
gorgeous. I
Oh
mean,
my
unfortunately,
gosh.
I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have done because I was still absolutely fried emotionally and in my nervous system. But intellectualizing it, beautiful place. Would have been beautiful.
Yes.
Would recommend to go there.
Yes, absolutely. But how has yoga helped you in this process and becoming more maybe self-aware and more inwardly focused
Mm.
on your own self-worth and your own needs and desires?
For me, yoga was the starting point of this journey. It was
Mm,
what I started before I even knew that I had any kind of connection to myself or my spirituality. Right back at that point where I was in the toxic relationship, it's actually what I adopted to try and help myself out of it. Luckily, at this point as well, my mum had already been through a spiritual awakening. So even though I
ah,
hadn't totally adopted what it was that she was doing, I didn't quite know. She'd already been living a holistic lifestyle. She'd already been tapping into certain spiritual aspects. So when I came to this stage of actually really needing it, it wasn't super alien for me. It wasn't like I had to then reframe an entire belief system to
right.
get into a practice that I didn't find approachable. Although, let's be honest, at that point, I really probably would have tried anything because of where I was at.
Right.
But it really was as simple as building up my awareness so I could become more self-aware. Because let's face it, if we're not aware of what it is that needs to shift in our life, if we're not aware of the patterns that are going on, if we're not aware of the way that we're talking to ourselves, the way that we're treating ourselves, the way that we're abandoning ourselves, nothing can change. So it
Right.
was that initial piece of first building body awareness and then mind awareness, emotional awareness, spiritual awareness, all the layers that you want to place on top of it, that helped me start to separate myself from the thoughts that I was thinking. Because
Yes.
we are the thinker of our thoughts, we're not the thoughts. And then separate
Correct.
myself, exactly, then separate myself from the emotions, because we are the feeler of our emotions, we're not the emotions. So
Correct.
starting just to place that little bit of space between me, the truth of who I am, the truth of who we all are, and then the experience that I was having at that point in time, and
Yeah.
placing just a little bit of distance there. I then actually began to adopt more the meditative practice in yoga philosophy and the eightfold path over the yoga asana, and that became a large part of my journey. Still absolutely still is to this day.
Yeah.
But certainly for the first 18 months, that was a real bedrock of what it was that I was practicing. And although
Yeah.
it was hell to sit with myself, it was hell to watch what was going on in my mind. Genuinely, for the first 3 months, I sat with meditation and was like, I actually don't understand. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
100%.
Just checking. I was literally like, I don't act like, what the actual fuck is this meditation about? I don't understand how this is helping me,
Yeah.
because I was having to sit and face my thoughts, face what it was that I was going through, and actually look my
Yeah.
shit in the eye. And then
Yeah.
about 3 months in, I was like, I was in a conversation with someone and I didn't react as fast to something that they said. I had a bit of space, a bit of breathing room, and I was like, that's it. That's
Yes.
why I'm doing this. That's how this is helping me. And then the rest was,
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
hurt.
Okay, so let's dig into that just a little bit, because if you're listening and you've had anxiety or you have intrusive thoughts, and like the kind that Ciara had, where it's like if somebody was in my head, they would probably commit me, because these thoughts are a little bit cray cray. They feel a little bit crazy, right? But the creating the space, so the meditation and trying to just sit with the thoughts and realizing that just because you think the thought doesn't mean the thought is true,
Mm-hmm.
like that whole piece of putting space between the initial thought that you've had and being the observer of the thought.
100%. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
space, creating that space and being able to
yes,
be the watcher and the observer of your experience is integral, because that's the space that then allows you to insert change. That's the space that
yes.
then allows you not to respond to a thought, to an emotion, to an action. And let me be
Yes.
incredibly clear, like, I did have to change tact with what it was that I was doing at a certain point, because meditation only took me so far because of how intense my mental experience was at that point in time, and
Right.
how governed by fear my nervous system was, and how hardwired that was into my system. So although I will always advocate for meditation, continue it until this day, I did have to change tact and layer it with other practices. However, it's that space. Meditation gives you that space between you sitting in the present moment and a thought coming in, so that you don't take that thought forward. You change the trajectory, you change the action, and then you move into a different timeline and a different way of being based on that space that you've created.
Yes. Oh my God. And that's such a game changer. For a lot of years I was a health coach, and one of the things that I would tell my clients is, when you have the urge to go open up the freezer and grab the ice cream, just pause for just 2 or 3 beats so that you can put some space between the cue and the action so that you can examine whether or not that's truly what you want. It's kind of the same thing, right? So
Absolutely. And you could use that principle with absolutely anything in your life before you take any kind of action. Give
yes,
yourself the space, give yourself the buffer. And that is easier to notice if you do some kind of meditative practice, if you are
agreed.
becoming aware, using an awareness based practice, whether that's breath work, whether that's seated meditation, whether that's some kind of movement practice. So, yoga asana does work for this as well because you're becoming aware of the body, aware of the
Yes,
experience of the body in time and space. So, any kind of awareness based practice helps you practice taking that pause, practice the watching, so that when you're in situ, you've practiced it prior. So, it's less
yes,
difficult for you to take that breath and to go, ah,
yes,
is this
yes,
who I want to be? Is this how I want to act? How can I turn my attention now back within to take control of my inner world and to take responsibility for it?
yes. Oh my gosh, that's such gold. Okay, your favorite, like your go-to awareness building practices?
Okay, I have several, and I have several for different things. So, as I mentioned, to start with, my journey was yoga asana and then went very heavily into meditation. I do think that having the yoga asana to start with perhaps prepared me for meditation because I didn't meditate with anything. I literally just sat. I didn't have a track. I didn't have any, it wasn't visualization meditation. It was
Mhm.
literally sit and watch your thoughts in silence, which now, if I was going back to do it again, I'm not so sure I would have done that because it was really hard at that point in time. It was
Yeah.
so freaking scary as well because I was literally I was sitting with what I was at that point in time, which was a ball of fear and thoughts, and yeah, it was
Yes.
pretty intense. But that's where I started. So that was my in. About 18 months later, although the space in my mind was increasing, I was finding a little bit more clarity. I was finding a little bit more space between, as I said, the initial impetus within and the reaction outward. But nothing really in my body was kind of shifting. So I changed tact with my awareness practice and I came across intuitive dance. So I started a dance based practice that would help me flow, that would help me feel, that would help me get out of the head and into the body in order to create awareness. So
Yes.
that then became a very key part of my awareness practice. And again, something I still practice to this day. I absolutely love it. If you're in the space of really intellectualizing your thoughts, really spending a lot of time up in your head thinking about things rather than taking action and
Yes.
rather than being with your entire experience in the body, then I would totally suggest something like intuitive dance, not 5, 6, 7, 8, let's do the choreography because you're still thinking about it, but something that helps you move and connect and be with your entire experience. The next thing that I absolutely love for awareness building, and again, this is another one that helps you get out of the mind and into the body, but with more depth, really, in terms of descending through the brain waves in our mind as well as connecting to the body, is yoga nidra. That's a
Oh,
fantastic.
love it.
Yeah, it's
I love
amazing,
it.
isn't it? A little excited squeal from us both. If
Yes.
you haven't experienced yoga nidra,
Oh my God.
absolutely
So
do it.
good.
I'll actually, there's two teachers that I'd really recommend. One is Tracy Stanley, Radiant Rest. Have a little read of that if you're hearing this and going, yoga nidra, I want to look into it. Tracy Stanley, Radiant Rest, fantastic book. And Indu Aurora, fantastic yoga
Oh,
teacher who also talks a lot and shares a lot about yoga nidra. But it's essentially a form of meditation that descends you down through the brain waves. But the opening to
yes.
a yoga nidra is what's called a nyasa, or a placing of consciousness around the body at different body parts. So you're not
Yes.
moving anything, you're just placing your attention to different body parts,
Yes.
noticing what you're experiencing, noticing what's coming up for you in that space. And if you're someone who's not used to being in your body, and there's absolutely no judgment there because that was totally me, as I said, floating head syndrome to the max. I don't think
Yeah.
I'd ever experienced what was going on in my body until late 2019, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you're in that kind of space, it's incredible for just
Yes.
slowly, gently connecting yourself back into your body and noticing what it is that you're holding on to and experiencing in that
Yes.
space without you having to really do anything.
Yes. Oh my God. I have a yoga studio that I go to here close by my house, and they do a yoga nidra on Mondays, the first Monday of the month. And I love it. I love going because it's so relaxing. And you're right, like you are putting your attention at different parts of the body, and it does get you out of the swirl of thoughts and overwhelm and all of that. So that's a beautiful practice. Okay,
Yeah.
the next thing that I want to ask you, what are your go-to practices for regulating your nervous system?
Oh, okay. So do you know what? I'm going to go back in with yoga nidra again because it's so powerful for regulating the nervous system.
Okay.
Now, this is where I was at with myself and why I kind of transitioned from the initial meditation awareness practice into something a little bit deeper like yoga nidra. So, as I mentioned, about 18 months went by with my meditation practice and nothing was particularly shifting in my body because the focus for me was so up in my mind. And although there was space being created between thoughts and actions, there was still a lot going on. And I hadn't yet tapped into how can I start to soothe my nervous system? How can I start to actually down regulate and live
Yes.
from a clear, rooted, calm place in the body, as well as trying to create this space in the mind? At that point, the emphasis had totally been on the mind, which for someone with chronic anxiety, it's always there anyway. Most of us are living up in our head in a day to day basis. We don't need more emphasis on the mind.
Right.
What I needed was to come back down into the body, was to get the logical mind out of the way. Now, we'll get a little bit sciencey here, I suppose.
Bring it.
The logical mind, we're in a place called beta brainwave when we're in our waking conscious state, our conversational state. So we're in beta brainwave right now.
Right.
High beta is an anxiety state. In that brainwave state, the gateway to the subconscious mind, where we can start to really concretely interface with our nervous system, down regulate, and start to practice that as our daily lived experience. The gateway to the subconscious mind at this point is shut. It's very hard to access the subconscious mind from a stress state, from a waking beta
Yes.
brainwave state. So I needed to kind of to begin a practice that would get my mind out of the way, so to speak, or my conscious mind, my logical thinking mind out of the way, so I could
Right.
be in a down regulated state in the brain and then also in the body, so I could start to access those deeper, more enriching nervous system states. Moving down through the brain waves through alpha, through theta, which is our dream sleep, and then into
Mhm.
delta, which is our deep sleep state. So we can also access those states from very deep meditative practices also. So that's kind of where I came into yoga nidra, realizing that my nervous system needed to be enriched on a much deeper level. And if I was in my waking mind, I was constantly hijacking my body with the logical thought. So my
Yes.
subconscious mind would act as my emotional body, act as my past self, and would fire off a response into the body from a trigger in my external environment, or from
Yes.
something someone was doing or something I perceived to be a threat. The body would start to hype up into this anxiety state, and then my logical mind would latch onto it, try and intellectualize it, would fire a fearful thought back down, and the body would go, oh, and it would ramp it up again. And
Yes.
if I was still in that state, I was getting caught in the loop. Logical mind, body, this feedback loop of just fear, fear, fear.
Yes.
Yoga nidra, first dance, actually, I must say, did get me into a little bit of a trance like state, a little bit lower down. But then yoga nidra was what bridged the gap, was what let me totally drop out of the head and to focus on the
Mm.
body so that I could be in this descended brainwave state, this deep sleep state without being awake. No, I was awake and aware, but without being, sorry, in the logical mind in that waking state, so that I could start to enrich my nervous system. So
Yeah.
that's what really began to work for me. So I suppose I answered that question a little bit in the last one, but
Yeah.
yoga nidra, I would say, yeah, is a deep nervous system practice for me.
Okay. 2 votes for yoga nidra. You heard it here. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely.
Okay. So from the time you were in Spain doing your yoga training, how long did it take for you to feel relief from the anxiety and from the intrusive thoughts and from the suicidal ideation?
I'm not going to sugarcoat it
Please don't.
because I don't think that's constructive or helpful for anybody. It took me, I'd say, about 2 years, not for it to totally subside. I had found space by that point.
Yes.
I knew that I had things that were working in some way or another. But in order to really get myself out of that initial sludge, it did take
Yes.
about 2 years. But what I will put into perspective here as well is that I'd been living like that most of my life up until that point. When I really look back and I think about what I thought was a pleasurable emotion at that point in time, it was actually my body just being hyper aroused by anxiety, and I was soothed by anxiety, because that's what I had learned was an appropriate response to love, was an appropriate response to trying to gain affection or gain something externally from myself.
Yes.
It was that anxious, 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 try and get it, grasp, grasp. I'd receive it, the relief, and that relief was such an adrenaline, like almost like a dopamine hit
Of
from the adrenaline
course.
of anxiety. So I was
Absolutely.
addicted to that cycle, and that was what was
Yeah.
hardwired into my nervous system.
Yeah.
So I had, I mean, it's 15 to 21 years of this consistent cycle again and again and again being repeated in my body to unpick out of,
Yeah. Oh,
hardwired in as a neuron pathway. So it was going to take, it was going to
yeah.
take some time, but I was so committed to sourcing that from myself, knowing that there was nothing wrong with me, knowing that there wasn't an inherent issue that I had, or that I was just broken. For a period of time, I did think that. Whilst I wasn't necessarily seeing the results, I was thinking, "Oh no, am I broken? Is this something that I'm going to be stuck with for the rest of my life?"
Yeah.
But knowing that I had to keep going for myself, I had to keep moving through and really laying the foundations for what it was that I wanted to experience, that I could then build on top of it. So it took me about, yeah, 2 years from that point to really start to think, oh my goodness, I think I'm coming out. I think I'm coming out of the woods now. I think we're
Yeah.
really gaining some ground on my healing, on my, or
Yeah.
no, on my metamorphosis. I prefer that phrase because
Oh, I
it
love
really
that.
was. Yeah, metamorphosis. Let's use that instead.
I love that. Okay. For somebody who's listening to this show and feels off, or they might have some anxiety that they have identified, what would you want them to pay attention to?
First of all, themselves,
Okay.
as in the actual anxiety as a feeling. Because for the first period of time, which is possibly why it took me a little while to gain some ground on my metamorphosis journey, on my healing journey, is that I was trying to patch it. I was trying to escape it. I was trying to go, no, 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 this isn't happening to me. I'm not that person. This is not what I
Right.
asked for. Rather than grabbing the reins and going, okay, this is a signal from myself that something needs to change in my life.
Yeah.
That was ultimately what I was being served. It wasn't that, oh no, I'm broken, let me quickly patch it up and fix it, and then I'm going to be an anxious person for the rest of my life. Absolutely not. That wasn't what it was. It was, I need to find a new way of being and a new way of living that is conducive not just for the people around me. It turns out that it has been that for everybody, the better that I've become,
Yeah.
but ultimately for myself. So, first of all, listen to the anxiety, not the thoughts, because the thoughts aren't you, but
That's right.
really get comfortable with, and it is so uncomfortable. I really empathize. I really, really do. It's so uncomfortable, but get comfortable with sitting with that feeling,
Yeah.
because there's something there, there's something underneath. Then start to lay the foundation of awareness. Okay, let's become aware. Let's try and separate myself a little bit from this experience,
Yeah.
as in the truth of who I am, my consciousness, and the anxious experience, the thoughts that are whirling. Then ask why.
Okay.
Why is one of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself. So once you've got a hold of, okay, I'm listening to the anxiety, there's something here that needs to shift for me, have patience in the answer coming. Okay, let's create the awareness. Let's start to bridge the gap, open up some space between myself and the experience. Why? Why is this feeling here? Because why is one of the most compassionate questions that we can ask.
Mm.
It starts to take us out of that space of, this is my experience and that's what I'm stuck with, to, okay, let me try and cultivate an idea of the story. Let me try and cultivate an idea of what it is that's got me to that space, because then I can climb out of it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me ask you this. What's something that you wish someone had said to you early in this process of awakening?
Cultivate a relationship with your body, because then everything will become so much easier.
It's a little bit of a shortcut, isn't it?
It is a little bit of a shortcut.
Yeah.
Yes, it is certainly a little bit of a shortcut. And I also partially think that's why it took me longer to climb out than I not would have liked. That's the wrong thing to say, because I would go through what I went through again and again and again to be the person that I am now and to know what I know now. However, I think it would have been a bit of a shortcut, which is what I now actually do within my work and within one of my methodologies, is starting with the initial point of start to connect with your body and know that's a safe place to be.
Yes.
Because if you are an anxious person, if you are experiencing anxiety, or even if you're the kind of person who is experiencing stress or just knows you spend a lot of time up in your head more than you perhaps would like, there's a high chance that you aren't particularly connected with your body at this point in time.
Yeah.
And there's a consistent mistruth that we're told as women, which is that our bodies aren't safe, aren't trustworthy, and are inconvenient. So as women, we have this extra load of societal dogma of what it is to be in a woman's body. So connecting back, as in starting to become aware, particularly of what's happening in your entire vessel, not just what's going on in the mind, starting to understand that despite the feelings that you're feeling, despite the racing heart, the icky stomach, that classic clenched panic feeling that you get,
Yeah.
your body is safe. It's just signaling you to come back.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, you guys. Ciara, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's so powerful. And I know that everybody who listens is going to be thinking twice about how to move through a season like this, or even just to take advantage of some of these tools that you've shared to help them in those seasons when life is lifing. Can I get an amen? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen.
Okay. All right, you guys. So thank you for being with us today. Please consider sharing this episode with somebody who might benefit from hearing Ciara's story and how she moved through this chronic anxiety and panic and intrusive thoughts to really reclaim this radical self love that she is living and helping others with. We'll see you next time.